Okay, our first speaker is Nyree Dardarian. She's a registered dietitian. She's director of Drexel's Center for Integrated Nutrition and Performance. And she's going to talk about the role of nutrition in attaining peak performance and race recovery. Please welcome Nyree.
Hi, everybody. Okay, is this good? Well, welcome. I'm glad you're all here tonight, and I am hi to everybody on the webcast as well. Glad to have you all here. So, like Rob said, I am a faculty member here and also board certified in sports nutrition. And I am going to talk about some tips to get you through the day, like the actual race day. So we had a previous running lecture where we discussed more about how to train, what do you have to do nutritionally to prepare yourself during the training part. So now we're, 2-3 weeks out from the race, and I hope that everybody is doing the proper nutrition needed for training. But now let's move into what do we do on that day? You wake up in the morning and you think, oh boy, it's here. This is the day. This is the first time I'm running 10 miles. How many people do you think are going to say that? I would. Okay, so this is just an overview of the top 10 tips that I have for today. I really stuck to the whole theme of today. So we do have 10 tips to go through. And this is an overview. I'm going to go through each one individually. Tip number 1. So we're going to start with where does this preparation for the race day begin? I'm going to say that it begins 24 hours in advance or the night before. That is the optimal time to consume carbohydrates. Carbs are good. Carbs are energy for race day. So at this time, since the race is early in the morning and you might not eat that much because there's certain timing that is really optimal for getting the most out of your nutrition for the performance, with an 8:30 start time, it might be difficult to do all that. So one way to ensure that you are getting the nutrients that you need, especially the glycogen that you need, which is the energy that you'll be using for running, start the night before. So eat a meal that's rich in carbohydrates. This is an example of what an athlete training plate would look like. So if you were an athlete and you wanted to, you know how you've seen the My Plate? How many of you have seen My Plate out there? Okay, so it basically is kind of, leveraging off of the My Plate. However, it's more designed towards eating optimally for performance. So they have a couple of different plates, and this one is a hard training plate or race day. And as you can see, 50% of the plate is full of grains and carbohydrates. And that's really what you want to aim for. You want to make sure that the majority of your meal, 60% of your meal, is carbohydrate that night before. Tip number 2, the night before again, because we're starting the night before, you want to drink enough water. You want to make sure that you're well hydrated going into that race day. You don't want to leave that into the last minute. However, I am going to caution that when I say well hydrated, I don't mean overhydrated. So you want to play that balance. You want to look at your urine and you want to make sure that it is light yellow, not clear, but that you are getting the optimal fluid that you need that night before. So just enough, check your urine, and the consequences, of course, of not getting enough fluid are really, they could be damaging and they can lead to injury, because what happens is it can lead to early fatigue, cardiovascular stress, increased risk to development of heat illness, because the water is what helps regulate your body temperature, and then also decreased performance. And with that decreased performance can lead to injury. If you're a little dizzy at the end, or you can slip, you can twist an ankle, you don't want to do that. So it also helps with avoiding injury. Tip number 3, don't run on empty. When you wake up in the morning and you're running late, you need to still eat something, because then your body is depending on other sources to produce fuel for it. But glucose is the best fuel for energy that day. And if you use other sources like fat stores that you might have or protein, you're going to be dipping into your muscle stores to get protein, and then you're going to be dipping into your fat. However, it uses a really not an efficient metabolic process to use fat as energy. On this day, you want energy readily available, pretty much at your fingertips, which it is if you consume it in the way of carbohydrates. So wake up early, which leads me to tip number 4. Eat breakfast. How many of you are breakfast eaters? Well, that's a good number. How many of you can eat and then run? Okay, good. I know that this isn't for everybody, but if you're really wanting to, maybe you're not racing against the person who has 4 to 5 minute miles, but maybe you're racing against yourself, right? This is the day that you really want to set your own personal record. Then you want to eat, you want to fuel up, and you want to make sure that you're getting the right foods in. So the best time to eat on this day is somewhere between 5 and 7 a.m. So it is important to wake up early, set your alarm, and kind of get your body into that preparation mode. And this is your big meal right now. Somewhere between 5 and 7 a.m. You want to aim for about 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate mixed in with a little bit of protein, and then some fluid. This is going to be the last big amount of fluid. And when I say big, that's really not that big. 15 to 20 ounces. We're talking about 2 cups of fluid in the morning before you head out. The reason why you don't want to be drinking that much later is because you don't want to have to be stopping, right, during the race and having to use the restroom. That is why it's very important to pay attention to some of the previous slides, which were the night before. The night before is really the best time to fuel up with fluid and fuel up with carbs. It sets you up for the next morning. But while you're here, I have this little asterisk there for liquid meal replacements. And the reason I have that there is because some people might be jittery, right? That morning, as you're kind of nervous, you have to get somewhere, you have to park, you have to get all your stuff together. How's this all going to work out? Maybe I don't have time to sit down and have oatmeal and banana. Well, in that case, a meal replacement supplement will do. Even a sports bar will do in this case, but something is always better than nothing. Okay. Tip number 5, don't eat too much fiber. So that won't happen, I'm pretty sure. However, I know my mom has told me that's what happens when you eat watermelon seeds, right? Doesn't a watermelon grow in your stomach? I think that's what I've heard. I've tested it, and I eat sunflower seeds at all of my kids' baseball games, and I don't spit the shell because I think that looks gross. So instead I swallow it. I don't know if that's good for you or not. But so far, I'm okay in this end. But eating too much fiber on the day of the race can lead to gastrointestinal distress. It can make you feel uncomfortable. And on top of that, it can fill you up a lot and make you feel extremely full, which can then prevent you from eating at the other parts of the day that we need you to consume food, and from consuming fluid as well. So we don't want fiber to displace your needs for these other nutrients. So try to lay low on the fiber. So this is not the day where let me go back here. I have here peanut butter and honey on toast. This is a day that I would say go for white toast. White toast, white bread has more glucose in it. And probably has the same amount of glucose in it, but doesn't have the fiber to prevent the metabolism of the glucose or delay it. So therefore, it probably is a better option for quick energy. Also, when it comes down to the oatmeal, this is where I suggest instant oatmeal. Number 1, it takes less time to make. And number 2, it is digested faster. So I would go with those options instead of whole grain oats that morning or multigrain bread that day. Okay, so now let's follow us through the chain. We started out with the night before. We're going to drink our fluids the night before. We're going to load up on carbohydrates the night before. That morning, now we're still thinking nutrition is on our brain, because that's all we're really thinking about today, right? Nutrition? Yes, this is the day. So then you think, I got to set my alarm. You set your alarm between 5 and 7. You have a good breakfast. It's full of carbohydrates. It has a little bit of protein in it, and you're drinking the last somewhat larger sum of your fluid for the day. Now you're there, you're in the mix of everything, and there's swarms of people around you. There's the people who are warming up right at the front of the line. They're the ones who are gonna get finished in what, 47 minutes? Is that the approximate time? And then there might be some of us in the back that might be finished in 2 hours, maybe. So all different levels, and you're feeling a little bit nervous, but this is your last chance right here. 30 minutes before the race, when you're in all of this mix, and they'll be handing out a bunch of stuff, but this is the last time to really top off your glycogen stores. So you got up in the morning and you ate your breakfast, but you used up some of that energy because you drove into the race, you walked around a little bit, you hugged people, you jumped up and down, you warmed up. Now you want to top it off. You want to add just a little bit more glucose into your body just to fill those glycogen stores up to the tippy top, so your body won't be asking for energy during the race. Now this race is only about 90 minutes, right? Generally, would you say? So during the race, you don't have to worry about eating anything because it's not that long of a race. But you do really want to focus on topping it all off right before you start. You might as well be on all the way fuel tank, all the way up. Why even chance it just a little bit to the left, you know? Mine goes to the left. So everyone does fuel tank, right, in their cars. Okay, so what can you do here? A little bit of a sports drink. That's a great way to start off. Put 3 to 4 ounces of that, perhaps. Or a sports gel. Remember, if you do consume a sports gel, it's a little bit less tough on the stomach if you drink some fluid with it. How about some gummy bears? Because really that's what it all is. You just want some glycogen. You just want some sugar to top off those glucose stores. Or like a piece of fruit, some jam and crackers. I like the jam and crackers, and I'll tell you why I really like that one. That's probably not something easy that you can pack along with you. However, the crackers do have some sodium in them, and the sodium there is something really good to just have electrolyte-wise with the amount that you might be sweating. It can help reduce cramping. So that's a good option. So you can go with something as simple as a few gummy bears to as not complicated, but more advanced as power gels. But whatever it is, this is your last opportunity, about 30 minutes before the race. Just top it all off. And then the run begins, then you're off. So what do we do? Do we need sports drinks at this point? Really, you don't need sports drinks. We're running about 90 minutes, like I said, but you do need to keep on hydrating. So how much? About 6 to 12 ounces of sports drinks for water for every 20 minutes that you're running. So about every 20 minutes, if you just stop off and get a little cup and drink it, that's about 4 ounces typically, get a couple of them along the way, it should be good. What it does is it decreases your time to fatigue. So the more that you can delay fatigue, the better you're going to be for a longer period of time. And then you cross the finish line feeling really good about yourself because you're not exhausted, you're not tired, and you really prepared your body well for these 10 miles. Okay? Number 7. So number 8. Tip number 8. You made it. Yay, you're crossing the finish line. You made it. Pictures are being taken, right? CBS News is there. Tell me how your run was. Well, I listened to my sports dietitian and I hydrated every 20 minutes and I feel really amazing. Everybody repeat after me. I listened to my sports dietitian from Drexel University but you should feel really good at this point. So you're finishing you're crossing the line, you're getting your times, it's very exciting. And now it's time to refuel. And this is a really important time because at this time, this magical 15 minutes to really, I want to say 15 to 30 minutes after the race, that is the optimal time to consume protein and carbohydrate to restore glycogen and to repair muscle damage during the race. It is more efficient at this time. Statistically more efficient to eat during this window than it is later beyond this window. That's why it's important to get it in at that time. Eat then. And then, I mean, and it's simple. It's not that much. It can be a smoothie. It could be a sports bar. It could be half a peanut butter sandwich. It could be a banana. I mean, it really, it's not that much, but it's important to do this now because that also prepares you to start the recovery process. And that prepares you also to start running again later. Not the same day, probably not the next day, but 2 days later, it will help with that recovery process. So then what? Rehydrate. During this time, you also want to rehydrate. The way that we do it a lot of times in athletes is we want to understand how much you sweat. You know, so there's a calculation, and we can weigh you before you race, and then weigh you after whatever the length of exercise in, and take into consideration how much fluid you consumed over that period of time, and then come up with a good idea of how much you sweat. Some people sweat more than others. And you would know if you're somebody who sweats more than others. I mean, somebody who sweats more than others knows that when they look at their body after they've been exercising, they kind of have a sheer white coating over their body. So that's the sodium. And so that we would be more of a sweater. So you want to replace the lost sodium, and you want to replace the lost fluid. But generally speaking, for every pound you lose during that length of exercise, you need to replace it with 24 ounces of fluid. So that's kind of like the calculation. Now, let's say you're not weighing yourself. Now, you could bring a portable scale. They have ones that runners use. No, they don't. But that wouldn't be a bad idea now, would it? We should patent that. Nobody out there in webinar, please do not take this idea. Okay, so you do want to rehydrate. So stick to about 2 to 3 cups of fluid after the race to rehydrate. And that's tip number 9. So after the race, is that what most people do? Yeah, you're shaking your head. So yeah, most people do. What are you shaking your head for? No. You don't know? Well, thanks for going in that direction, though, because that helped me out. Because most people do not do that after the race. In fact, most people might rehydrate differently, right? So you cross that line, and it's a celebration. It's time to celebrate. The beer is there. And people have said things like, alcohol helps rehydrate you better. It doesn't. So actually, I understand this. You might want to have a glass of beer or wine after, but I caution you to please first rehydrate with fluid and refuel with protein and carbohydrate, and then move into alcohol, because alcohol can delay glycogen metabolism. So if you did consume some glycogen, it can interfere with that. It can delay rebuilding muscle and protein stores, protein synthesis, and it also can exacerbate dehydration. So that's not the first step. You definitely want to make sure that you refuel your body appropriately, you consume fluids to meet your fluid losses appropriately. You might want to throw in a soft pretzel there to get a little bit of sodium back into your body as well, and then consider having a drink of beer if you want to. But don't listen to the myths. It is not a recovery fuel. It is not. So those are my 10 tips. The idea is right now you're still in this phase. You have 3 weeks left to kind of move into what you're going to do for that big day. So this is the time to try things out. Try some of this. See what you feel like if you eat before you go out for a run, if you fill up with fluids, if you drink throughout your run, and if you refuel appropriately. Try out some gels. See if that's the way to do it. Try things out now, because you don't want to try them on the race day. So if they're handing things out to you that day, like a new type of a bean or a gummy of some sort, this is probably not. Save it. Put it in your pocket and use it another day. Try it out during training, but don't try something new that day. And don't always have to listen to what works for everybody else, because just because something works for one of your friends doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. So you really need to listen to your body and understand what your needs are, and they may change every day too. So you have to kind of go with how you feel as well. sometimes what works for you all the time may not always work for you on that day too. So have a couple of things ready to kind of combat that. So if you're not in the mood that day, you brought a backpack and you have some sports drinks in there and you have some gels in there and you have some gummy bears. Go with what you feel is right. If you don't feel like having those gels that day, don't do it. Go for the gummy bears. Have a little bit of orange juice. Try something that you feel comfortable with, and be flexible, because that you don't know what's going to go on. That's it. Those are the 10 nutrition tips.